What's up, everybody? Happy New Year. I figured I'd start the year off with a sort of tutorial thing of walking you through how I drew this Mirko drawing, starting with the loose sketch. In this one, I really want to sort of capture the movement in her leg, in her sort of like lunar arc kick, and I figured it'd be a good sort of way to teach you how I do that digitally when I'm sketching it out, and also when I'm inking it, because inking it is a whole different ball game when you're mostly when you're working with traditional art, because you only get one chance. So okay, so as you can see, I'm kind of framing her torso right now, trying to set up for the kick, and I want to really push that action into the foreground, kind of taking up almost like 10% of the whole page with that like hard movement stroke situation. And then usually my approach when I'm doing these sketches is I want to make sure I'm at least hitting all the corners of the paper. There's not like a big open white space on any side, so I try to stretch out all of her limbs to kind of reach each end of the sheet. You can see that I threw in that little piece of hair to kind of fill out that white space in between her leg and her right, or her leg and her left arm. And right now I'm kind of working out the face, which is hard because everybody's going to be looking at the face, so you want to make sure it's on point, right? You want to give her that sort of furious look because she's in the middle of doing an action, so you want to kind of portray the fact that she's putting oomph into the kick. And on top of that, in the manga, she's a pretty cocky character, so I give her a bit of a smirk. But yeah, you can see now I'm just trying to work out the perspective of the leg. It's gonna like feel like it's getting bigger as it's coming forward in the page, and I'm kind of breaking it down as if the leg itself is in the foreground and the rest of her torso and body is in the background. And then to finish the sketch off, I'm trying to see how I can keep the hair in motion. I'm trying to like flip it backwards, and I kind of like that when you draw characters and their hair is like being pushed upwards versus normally how it's down. Specifically with Mirko, because she doesn't really have her hair being pulled back to see the hairline and everything, so I figured that'd be kind of a cool way to sort of portray the movement and motion in this kick specifically. But you can see that I add like some strokes in the background there to the top right of the sheet, just to show that it's a full sort of arch, right? And here we go, we're moving into inking, and specifically I like to start with the face. I don't know if I've already said this or not in past tutorials, but I always like to start with the face, just mainly because, if the face is bad after you end up inking the whole thing, then it kind of compromises everything, right? And since seeing as that's what everybody goes to look at immediately, then they're not going to like really appreciate the rest of the drawing if the face is kind of whack. And it's easiest to start over when you kind of mess the face up at first. So I go with that, and then now I'm gonna just be inking the hair. My favorite part about sort of doing hair like this, where it seems more of like a ribbon shape, where it kind of wraps around and then you can see the other side of it, is because it is just easier to kind of make sense in my mind. Instead of like doing individual hair strands, you're more kind of drawing ribbons coming off of the head, and it kind of helps add to the motion. And also it's just real satisfying to do the shadowing and to do the sort of like transition from the front side to the back side of the ribbon, as you can see in the top right there. I don't know why. You're probably going to see a ton of the sort of ribbon shapes in my artwork if you look closely, because it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a satisfying little shape to do, come on. Yes, that's how it is. And so to continue onward, you can see that I do very small strokes in her bangs, kind of in the middle there, with a point liner. Here, I'm doing it right here. And it kind of adds to the individual hair strand effect, but doesn't really like give off too much detail, which will just make it seem too busy. And I do get a lot of questions about how I keep my sort of arches, I guess. I don't know, my like circle shapes, the rounded shapes, somewhat pretty straight looking and not very jittery in a way. And I guess the best way I can try to explain around that is when you're doing those shapes, you can see like I'm kind of flicking my wrist, right? It really helps keep that straight look to your lines. You don't want to. I made a small like sort of TikTok, Instagram reels that is talking about this, but you don't really want to draw these lines slowly. You want to make sure that you have energy in motion into the lines, and I'll go a bit more into detail when we get into the actual speed lines of the kick itself, but it kind of applies to the rounded shapes in the hair. Is you just want to make sure that you're kind of doing these round shapes in more of a faster motion than more of like a slow sort of delicate motion, just because I think the slower you go, the more your hand will end up kind of stressing out and making little wiggly lines. Um, but yeah, so we're gonna continue through drawing this little hair. It's a lot of sort of trying to figure out what is overlapping kind of deal, like um, which hair ribbon is on top of the other. And right now I'm kind of working in the crevices of all of the individual separate ribbons to help kind of tie it all together. And one thing you'll notice is there's a lot of cuts of me kind of jumping to different parts, is mostly because I'll end up taking a lot of breaks, or I'm like probably watching something, so I'll look up and kind of see what's going on. But I try to make sure to cut it down so that only the footage is showing when my pen is on the paper. But yeah. So now we're gonna move into her ear, and which is a more fuzzy type object. So you'll see that my lines are a bit more, I guess, just sort of jagged in a way. And we'll just end up speeding through some of this to get to more of her lower body real quick. As we go through, you'll sort of see that the outside lines of her ear are a bit thicker, just mostly because I want them to help stand out a bit more and kind of shape the whole silhouette of her as a whole. And then we're going to move into her arm, and this is always tricky for me because I'm trying to figure out the anatomy of an arm also while it's like going backwards prospectively. So, which is something that I can try and cover in a later video, which is just arm anatomy in general, because it's just a whole separate beast that I'm still trying to understand. Which gives me an opportunity to tell you about my next upcoming video, which is going to be different from all of this traditional stuff that I've been doing. It's going to be a hand tutorial, and I'm thinking that I want to do like a bunch of sort of body part tutorials, which kind of ultimately add up to me helping you sort of understand my thought process when going through these drawings, step by step. And I figured the best way to start is with hands, because that is sort of what I try to make my most important part of the drawing, is because, most people are looking at faces and hands because that's where all the emotion goes. And so I'm hoping that the one after hands could be like emotion and faces, but starting with hands, I'm just going to basically draw a ton of hands and kind of break them down as I'm going through them to kind of help you understand where I'm coming from. And speaking of, this is kind of a good place to tell you that, like, these are some of my favorite types, is the more just really loose in the background hands that are kind of shaped by a silhouette and not really enveloped in detail. It's just the simple shape, and then you pretty much have the whole indication of what it's doing back there. But anyways, yeah. So some of the upcoming videos will be more based off digital art. But okay, we're moving into the movement strokes of the kick, and you can see I kind of marked up my my background board a bit. It's a little messed up after a lot of time passing of me just using it as a drawing board. I got a lot of nicks and scratches, including some great stickers of my cat to remind me who all of this is for in the end. But anyways, so as you can see there, I'm doing more like speedy strokes, flicking of the wrist, and I guess I'm gonna take a break from that and go back to the body. I tend to jump around a lot in my drawings, but anyways, yeah, I sort of have this plan to start doing more versatile videos outside of just what you would normally expect, and what I've been doing. I like to do like dynamic posing in sketch form. Some maybe an office tour, kind of show off the art books that I kind of look at and whatever reference books I have, because I got a lot, and I feel like that would be kind of a good informational, fun video to make. Maybe another AMA, some tips for making TikToks and stuff. Yeah, just kind of switch it up and give you some more content other than just me traditionally drawing something, because there's a lot more that goes into me actually getting to this point, So, yeah, we're kind of working with the other arm here, and I'm gonna kind of work backwards with her muscle structure, trying to understand with that deltoid, and then have it sort of lead into the glove. And seeing as it's kind of pointed backwards, we're gonna see a lot of the inside of the glove, and then we're gonna get to the next hand shape, which is, like I said, just kind of a loose indication of what we're looking at. We don't want to be adding too much details, like you don't want to have the knuckle structure in there or anything. Just kind of like, just little sweet lines that kind of indicate it. We're not trying to be Picasso on a distant hand here. So yeah, I'm just gonna draw on those fingers. I kind of like having them spread out at the end and kind of convex inward as they get to the base of the hand. Kind of, I guess, an homage to Horikoshi's style. So here I had to sort of pencil in her little moon symbol on her chest, because you gotta try to make sure that you follow that symbol on the same plane, because it's kind of hard to do a rounded shape on something that's pointed downwards and also has that sort of like breast structure. So yeah, had to sort of sketch that one out, which is something I got to do sometimes, because I don't really have it indicated in that initial digital sketch, because I'm working fast here. I gotta get things done. So when I kind of approach something that I'm not sure how to do, I'll just go the old-fashioned way, hit it with some pencil, see how it's gonna work out before putting the ink on. And yeah, we're gonna continue through with this hair, trying to get that shape in there. Keep the flow going. It sort of has an S form with the top left part of her hair all the way down to the bottom right, and kind of adds to the whole movement. Because the hair itself is like a character coming off of another character. You want to make sure that it all seems like it's going one direction, and since she's kind of going in an arc motion, I kind of wanted to continue that with the hair itself. I'm going to speed it up to get through the waist here a bit, so we can get to trying to explain to you how I'm approaching these legs coming into the foreground. As you can see with my lines, they're a bit more, I like to say, corroded. It kind of helps show that it's more being reaching into the foreground of the camera, so they're a bit more thicker, and it helps give off the sense that it's more in motion. And yeah, so I'm going to try to break down her like muscly legs, because Mirko's legs are iconic. You got to make sure you do them right. But okay, so we're doing more speed lines, kind of moving into it, and as you can see, I'm doing them faster than just kind of carefully pinning them out, because it keeps that structure, and it doesn't break the illusion of it being a carefully drawn thing. You want to, like I always say, just flick your wrist, and it really just helps add to the stoicness of the lines. And that's usually what's going on when you're creating something with movement, is you want to help convey it, you want to make sure that you're adding lines all around it. And that's the only place I'm going to be adding the lines, just to kind of show that that's what is most important and what specifically is moving. And I'm not going to follow through with her leg all the way to the end of the paper. You can see on the top part there, it just kind of ends and then the lines begin. Mostly because I feel like if I drew that line that kind of continues through with her leg, it would just kind of get too busy in that sort of motion area. So I just switch it up from giving her her leg structure and then just having it shoot off into the into the abyss of the left side. And yeah, so when I'm doing motion lines, I'm always trying to keep a rhythm with my hand, and just kind of as if you were scribbling a sheet of paper. Like, I guess a good way to practice would be to get like maybe a separate sheet of paper and just kind of do that sort of arc with your whole arm. Put your whole arm into it and just slowly move your arm downwards as you're doing it, and it'll just help you get a rhythm that kind of keeps all the lines in going in the same direction, and kind of having a nice distance between each other, so it doesn't really look like they're all shooting off into different directions. And it would also be a good exercise to help you kind of understand line weight too. And actually, I can probably cut in a small little clip of me doing it to help convey what I'm talking about. So that clip is going to be right here. Okay, so check this out. I'm using the Tombow felt tip, and I'm going to leave the sound on for this just because I think it'll help you kind of understand the movement that I'm putting into it and the energy. But yes, so as you can see, I'm just kind of getting into that same rhythm, that same motion, and slowly dragging my arm down as I do it to help keep the lines consistent, to kind of help you with the whole speed line effect. And like I said, it's just all kind of in the rhythm. Now let's switch over to the Copic gas infused. It'll kind of help with some thicker lines. And the one thing I like about this one is the lines kind of taper on each side if you're able to kind of do it correctly, if you're really sort of delicate with it. But you can see I'm just that same rhythm and slowly moving my arm down, and it kind of keeps the lines straight and all going in the same direction. If I was to do that really slowly, you'll see some jitter in the lines, and it's kind of hard to maintain the same sort of parallel direction when you're doing it slowly. So you want to make sure you're like flicking your wrist, kind of how I'm doing here. So here's much smaller lines. You just got to get used to flicking your wrist when you're doing these lines. So just grab a sheet of paper and just make a ton of lines. Do a ton of speed lines. And get yourself a Tombow felt tip pen. Those are really good for stuff like this, at least for me. And so I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to try to show you what it's like when I'm just doing like a super loose punch. So real quick, I'm just going to sketch it out. And there we go, little punch, little hand, close the fingers, get that thumb over there, and it's just super loose. Just because I want to show you what it's like to kind of draw something in action real quick. And there won't be many lines on the top and bottom because I want to show that the action is being, kind of conveyed as if the punch is going to the left of the paper instead of up and down. So you can see I make the lines a bit more dramatic where it's coming from, and then pull in some lines on top of it to kind of give it a place to come from. And we're going to kind of outline the sketch that I made sort of in a way, not like really detail it, but just kind of put some dots, kind of an indication that the finger is closing there. But yeah, just kind of an idea for you how I do that. So yeah. Okay, there we go. Hopefully that's helpful. Just go ahead and grab a sheet of paper and make some lines. Just go crazy, make all different types of lines, thin, thick, all types, and you will eventually get it if you're just kind of practicing and trying to get into the rhythm of things. But now I'm almost finished up with the ink here, so I'm just kind of laying the final details on that back foot. And you can see what I do with sometimes when I do the dark shading is I like make a few more hatched lines just to kind of give off the effect that it's more transitioning into a lighter tone, I guess. I don't know. I just kind of like the way it looks. It looks very comic-y, And when you're drawing a My Hero character, you want to give off that comic-y feel. finish up her little rabbit foot. I'm not sure. I never really understood how her foot worked, you know, because there's like 4 toes coming out of it, and she seems human. She seems like there's 5 toes, but you know what? She's also a rabbit, so it's possible her foot is just shaped different under that crazy Buddhaverse, or it's like some sort of mech situation. Who knows? And you can see here for her back foot, I'm just kind of outlining the shape of it, the silhouette, and then kind of going in with the details pretty lightly. It's a technique I'll use sometimes when I want to just kind of iterate that something's there, but not really kind of go crazy and add too much detail on it. But okay, I think this is it. I think that's the ink for it. Sometimes I'm always like, man, I really like the ink, but now I gotta color it. But you know what? That's gonna be something we tackle with this one. I'm gonna sign it with the white pen, just in the black spot, just because I like the contrast. Now I'm gonna just speed it up here a bit as we go through it. I typically like to pick each marker and try to lay down all of the places that I think the color would go before moving on to the next one, just because it kind of makes things a bit more easier for me to kind of, because you don't see it, but off to the side I have like a bazillion markers, and it just gets confusing when you're trying to go back and pick out the same one that you used. So that's just, I'll try to make sure I like color in all of the specific colors that the marker is warranted for. Was that a sentence? I don't even know. I'm sorry. It's like 5:36 a.m. right now, so I just got up. So, and this is in 2 parts. So I started the first part yesterday, and I'm trying to finish out the color today. So, all right. As you can see, though, I left on the right side of the page. You can see I kind of left some of it uncolored, so there's some white, and that's just kind of my little indication of lighting. So now I'm going to try to work from that, and with the lighting coming in on the right side, I'm going to use a darker marker to kind of convey shadow and tone and what's the word? I'm blanking on it right now. Plane change, I guess, you know, so for her left side of her face. So you can see that the darker color kind of conveys that her face is kind of going back, right? Going like kind of changing planes backwards. And here I'm using the blender to kind of soften the marker strokes a bit on the face, because usually when I'm coloring in the face, I'm very careful not to make it too harsh, because like I always say, like, everybody's looking at that, so you don't want to have like all the marker strokes be a bit sloppy. And that's where the blender marker comes in, because it really helps just kind of soften all of those sort of hard lines. But yeah, now I'm going in with the darker one and trying to kind of fill out those muscle details, while also keeping in mind the whole lighting situation I picked out. So I'll make sure that all of the shadows on her body kind of follow suit with the way that I lit it coming from the right side of the page. Fill in that moon color and all of the little kind of bells and whistles, and then I get down to the leg, which is, you know, when you're covering a lot of ground with the same color, you can see I just kind of try to follow the geometry of whatever I'm coloring, right? So you can see as it's like a rounded muscle, right? Rounded leg. So I'm trying to make sure that I follow the same plane as the leg itself, if that makes sense. Just because it kind of helps, for me at least, give it a bit more texture. Because when it comes to coloring with a marker, it's not just about adding the color, it's about using the marker strokes to kind of enhance the texture of whatever your drawing is of. So one artist, Art Germ, that I really like, and his marker work is just insane. I'm sure you all already know Art Germ. The man is just a legend. But I've noticed that he seems to follow the texture or the plane of whatever he's drawing, and it just I tried to pick it up from him. because I'm not really working with paint, so it's not as easy to blend stuff. I mean, albeit there's also blending markers like I used earlier, but it's just it doesn't come out as smooth in general. So when you're working with markers, you just want to do your best to try and make it seem like, it's not very obvious that you were just kind of scribbling in a color. So we get over to her white hair, and my favorite part is when I'm coloring something that is white, just because it doesn't take that much sort of thought or color to convey. So I just add some gray tones to kind of give it some rounded depth and everything. I completely colored the top of her hair gray to just kind of put that in shadow and make sure that the individual ribbon strands stand out with the white highlights. And you'll see that I do the same when it comes down to her suit. Because, like I said, with the whole lighting situation coming up from the right, I'm going to try to make sure that I fill in the shadow for the left side. And I'll leave a lot of it white, but just go with that classic warm gray 2 color. I gotta say, if you invest in a gray tone, a cool gray and a warm gray tone set, for markers, whether it be Copic or Arteza, it's gonna take you very far. It works so well. Is just something that is an easy way to add shadow when you don't really need to get that specific like color, and you just want to like put something in shadow. It's very nice. As you can see there, I kind of outlined what I wanted to shadow before I actually started kind of filling it in, and that's just a good way to help me kind of keep in the lines, I guess. So yeah, I'm just trying to darken it in. I think we're kind of getting to the end here. She herself is pretty much done, other than kind of rendering out the legs and the gloves, I guess. You can see me doing the plane change there on the finger. Now, one thing you'll notice when we come to me shading in the legs is I don't really end up liking the first color I go with. But you can see on the left of the screen there, all those marker test strokes, is I start out with a really super light color to see if it works out. And then here I'm kind of darkening it with another color that just kind of gives it a bit more shape. But that's something I'll always do, is I'll try, if I'm not super sure if I want to go a certain route, I'll use like a really light marker to kind of try and visualize at least what it will look like. And here we go. It's a third layer of shadow here, but I don't think it's to completely cover up what I just did, but just more add some more some, I don't know, depth or whatever to it. So yeah, and this one is more of a gray. You can see I'm using a cool gray 4. And like I said, it doesn't have to be like a darker purple each time to add that shadow. It's just if you just hit it with some grays, then it kind of helps, I guess, darken the color that it's already going over. So super helpful. And now I'm just starting to throw in a pretty loose background. I always like just kind of going light on my backgrounds because I want to mainly have all the attention on the character. And with Mirko, I wanted to have her like breaking through some rocks or something, so I'll throw in some pretty light rocks in the background. Usually my favorite thing to draw as a background is just some busted rocks, just because it always like kind of adds to the whole idea of action and fighting and stuff going on. Yeah, some little dots. And here I'm trying to like follow through with the whole idea of her lunar arc move. You can see that at the bottom right, I'm trying to have her like maybe kick up some dirt in the background that's coming from the start of the kick, and then it follows through at the top of the sheet and then comes all the way around on the left side with that leg coming down. So I'm trying to kind of use her own move as a way to frame her, if that makes sense. And you'll see like the dirt's coming up with some rocks. My general idea is if I'm going to add a background to a character, I want to make it at least frame them really well. So you can see the focal point feels like it's her face at first, and then it probably draws your eye down her leg, her kicking leg, and then suddenly changes pace as you see it, like all of those strokes going off to the left side, and maybe the hair will help you kind of guide your eye around it, and then make you notice that she's following through in the back there, and then the dirt getting kicked up. And I'm going to throw in some really light smoke just to kind of fill it in again, to kind of show that I'm framing her. It doesn't really like inhibit her, but it does kind of take the white space out of that area between her arm and her leg. And yeah, I think this is coming to the end. Hopefully this was helpful, me kind of having some commentary through one of my drawings, and here's how it came out. Thanks for watching.